G'day my friends, what is going on? Welcome to A Mentor's Guide 2, and this time we're going to be talking about taking mature and wise action. This is video 2 in a 2-part series. The first video, we talked about impulses, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it, what impulses to follow, what impulses to reject and throw in the bin. So, if you haven't seen that, what are you doing here? Get back there and watch that video, and then come back and we'll continue on from there. Cheers to you. Boom, grab a coffee, cup of tea. Let's sit back and have a chat. There are 3 elements when it comes to taking action and the drivers behind our action. You know, if we take this conversation of impulses and make it a little more nuanced, there's probably heaps of things, to be honest, that drive our action, but let's break it down into 3 categories to make it nice and easy. There is a push, there is a pull, there is a calling. Let's come back and talk about the calling in a second. Right now, let's talk about the push and the pull. Initially, for most people, what drives their action is what we call a push. This is when you've had experiences that have challenged you or that have been negative, or you've observed experiences that have been challenging or negative, and you think you have a kind of reaction to it and think, I don't want to end up like that. So let's just say someone grew up in a family where there was financial pressure or stress, or there was always stories about not enough money, or there was just this sense of not enoughness, and that person grew up to go, I don't want to raise my kids in a family where there's financial pressure. I want them to be cared for and catered for and everything they could ever need, so I'm going to get out there and crush it and work hard to make lots of money. I bet you all know someone like that. Another example is someone who grows up with an absent parent, and they think, I'm going to be a more engaged, more present parent and take care of my kids because I don't want them to have to live through what I went through. And another example might be, I had a client once who, in her late teens, early 20s, big overweight girl, and then had this motivation to get super fit and super healthy, and went out and bloody crushed it. Changed her diet and her lifestyle and started going to the gym and ended up being, a CrossFit champion, doing competitions and things like that. So the common narrative and story with a push is, I don't want to return to that thing. I don't want to re-experience that thing. I don't want them to have to deal with that thing. There's always a reaction against something. So it's like some challenge has kind of propelled, that's the push, has pushed you forward into change. It's always an externally driven thing. It's something that happened in your environment, externally driven thing pushes you forward. Is it bad? No, it happens to everyone. So I'd love you to think, okay, I wonder what has pushed me, whether it's health, fitness, relationships, financial, the kind of relationship you want to be, like what's pushed you in your life to succeed. And if you get really still and notice, it's probably something that's motivational. It's come from something you've lived through, right? And when we're being pushed, it's really interesting that the story, like the background mindset, the programming that's behind the action is very active and resistant in its nature. I don't want to end up like that. I have to achieve to earn love, fill in the blank, but it's always like some resistance and some negativity at the basis of the story. Sometimes it's out of sight, we don't even know it's there, the core driver. So the interesting thing about a push is that it always ends up in some kind of relationship with a pull. Like I was at the gym this morning, and the way I structure my gym days is there's a push day and a pull day. They bounce off each other. And when I'm doing the pull day, the push day is resting. When I'm doing the push day, the pull day is resting. And so when we have this thing in life where we're being pushed, because it requires a motivation and some resistance and some effort on our part, there's always a tendency towards a pull. So what the bloody hell's a pull? Thank you for asking. A pull is something that takes you from whatever you're being pushed towards and promises relief. So let's just say you were taking care of your health and you were being pushed. Then a pull is the impulse you feel towards just relaxing, taking a break, eating the pizza or the chocolate cake. A pull is when you decide, I'm going to read a book and get my habits in order. But then you have a really stressful day, you're overwhelmed, your mind is really busy, and all of the intentions to read a book go out the window because, Netflix just sounds so tempting to kind of numb myself and not have to think about anything anymore. So the pull is what takes you away from the constant push and promises relief. But here's the interesting thing. The pull towards familiarity, towards old habits, towards unhealthy things, initially promises relief, but the fruits of leaning into the relief, you end up worse off than before. So think about in your own life, when do you get an inclination towards something that brings initial relief but leaves you worse off than before in the big picture or the long run? The second order effect or consequence of the action leaves you worse off. Do you know what I mean? Like if you eat a bunch of rubbish food and you're like, I just want this beer or this alcohol or this cake or this, and initially you're like, I need it, yum, and it might be a joyful experience there in the moment, but the consequence leaves you feeling heavy and lethargic and you can't get up and do your fitness routine the next day because you feel too sluggish or your digestion's out or something like that. So a pull is something that we get sucked into by the shiny wrapping of relief. We cannot make relief the compass of our action. If we're looking for relief, we'll always end up, it takes us from the big picture. It'll always take us, off path and towards something. By the way, not always. Obviously, like the other day, I was out in the sun. We were at the beach. We got burnt. We dried with the salt. Have you ever had like burnt red skin from the sun and the salt dries on your skin? You come home and you have a nice cold shower in the fresh water and it's just like, this is the best shower of my life. That's relieving, but there's no negative second order consequence from that. So I understand there's a call for relief, but we have to be wise when there's a temptation towards things that are going to pull us from our path. But here's the interesting thing. If we're moving from a push, we cannot maintain the energy of the resistance and the motivation. So there's always a relationship with the pull. We need the relief from the striving and the over-efforting. The over-efforting, the striving and the intense drivenness always leads us towards needing relief. So if you're someone that always needs relief from the incessant drivenness you feel, you're probably being pushed. And that's what's leading to the pull. Now, what do we do? What do we do? The third form of action is a calling. And when we talk about a push, it's something that is loud and it's intense and it's always a movement away from something. It might not even be running, but might be running away from something, but a movement away. A calling is what you're moving towards, the clear direction that you're moving towards. And it's a gentle, inner, heart-driven, soul-knowing propulsion towards something, not away from something. And the other interesting thing about a calling is that it's a quiet whisper. And it doesn't require over-efforting. It doesn't require intense motivation. Like you don't have to be motivated to move towards a calling because it's something that's genuinely interesting and inspiring to you. And I'm not even talking about your big life's calling. I'm not talking about your one life calling, like your purpose in being here in a human body. I'm just talking much more simply, like, what are you being called towards next? The way I frame it in my mind is, what's God calling me towards next? Like, who am I becoming? And, you know, the same conversation works even if you don't have a spiritual orientation. You can just choose, what's the next evolution of who I am being and becoming as a human? But what am I being called towards next? It might mean, you know, if you own your own business, you might be putting the tools down. If you're a chippy or a builder, you might be putting the tools down and employing people to do the hard work while you take care of the business and handle more of the bookwork. If you're a parent, it might be a more present and connected parent in or participating in the activities your kid enjoys, rather than always trying to make them do what you want to do. It might be a financial upgrade. It could be something to do with health, but it could be a way that you're contributing to the world. But what are you being called towards? And I find with the clients that I work with, when you can clarify what the calling is, the next evolution of who you are becoming, the more you can speak to that and clarify it and put your eyes on it, it pulls you out of the whole story of push and pull. It pulls you out of the whole story, because you're no longer running from something, you're running towards something. So once you know where you've come from and what the driver has been pushing you, it can be really clear to articulate, okay, what's next for me? Who am I becoming next? Like, let's go back to the story of the client who was driven into good health because she was, a big girl in her early years. The reason she came to coaching, we sat down and I said, like, hey, you seem really fit and healthy. I know you've got a good business. Like, why are you here? How can I help? And she sheepishly kind of looked from side to side, as if, make sure no one's listening, because here's this motivated, driven, strong woman. And she said, I just want some peace. I said, oh, really? Okay, some peace. And we went into the story, and that's when she said, told me that back in her early years, she'd been heavy and overweight, and that's what caused her to get motivated to step into action and get healthy. So I said, well, what's in the way of you being peaceful now? She said, if I stop, I'm scared I'll end up like I was. Like, there it is, the push. You talk to people who are overachievers and excessively driven, you get right into their psychology. Okay, what's in the way of whatever the calling is? What's in the way of you stepping into who you're becoming? I'm scared if I stop the achievement, I won't know who I am. I'll have no value in the world. Oh, that's interesting. There's no inherent worth. So a calling is an expression of your inherent worth. It's something that comes from within, where there's natural inclination and inspiration to move forward, to grow who you are. And as I said in the beginning, the push is great, and that's how most people start. But what we are talking about, you and I right now, is mature action. And most of the action-based conversations I have with clients, they're somewhere in the realm of transitioning from a push to a calling. That's what they're going through. They're reworking their deep psychological framework to drop resistance, to drop who they thought they had to be in the world, to step into who they choose to be, who they were born to be. What am I being called towards? What does the next evolution of me look like? Who am I becoming? And it's really interesting, the more you can speak to and articulate whatever the next calling is, whatever the next evolution of you is, the pulls will still be there. You'll still be pulled towards things that promise relief, but your discernment gets sharper because you can so clearly see what the calling is. And so the pull will still be there, And you know that just because it's a calling, it doesn't mean it's going to be easy. There might be hard work involved, but there's a joy in it. There's a satisfaction in the toil. And so the pulls will still be there. But you know, based upon our conversation and the development of your own wisdom, that relief is not the compass. I don't have to yield to relief because I can see the second order consequence of that relief is going to lead me further from the calling. Whereas even if right now I'm heading in the direction of the calling and I do the hard thing, the second order consequence of doing the hard thing is going to mean more ease, more satisfaction, more fulfillment. So what we need to ask ourselves is, what are the fruits of the action I'm taking or not taking? Is this getting me closer to whatever the calling is? Or is it a pull that's taking me further from it? So, mature and wise action. At some point, we clarify what the push was, and it evolves into the pull. The very thing that got us to this point in life is now going to be an obstacle for what's coming next, who I'm becoming next. That sweet spot in between is where most coaching happens. And then all the while we have to deal with this pull. But once we understand that relief is not a good driver, is not a good choice, in those situations when we can be aware of second order consequences, then we can start to take wise action rather than be fooled by the glorious illusion that relief in that regard promises. So, I need to go finish my coffee. I hope this is helpful. It's a whole lot of waffle, 16 minutes, 17 minutes. So I hope it really lands and it's helpful. I'd love to hear from you. Let me know. Let me know what landed in this and any questions you have. And I want to keep these videos, the Mentor's Guide to videos, coming. So I want to make them specifically relevant to you and how I can help and keep them pumping. So big love to you. Happy days moving towards your calling. And I'll chat with you soon.